It's time. It's episode 42. Watto, we can't muck around today. We have issues and we need to talk. My name is Martin Devlin. I work for the platform. Mark Watson is an international sporting commentator. He's also a radio host who's not afraid to opinionate, to pontificate, and if need be, remonstrate.
Apologise to me!
Let's start with racism from Qatar towards the All Whites. I've been talking about this today a lot, mate, and let me just explain where I sit with this. Racism is BS. I don't care where it is, how it is, what it is. And I think most of us in the world accept that. Something was said on that field, okay? We don't know exactly what was said. It was offensive enough to make the All Whites players react the way that they did. Distancing ourselves from the actual incident and the emotion around it. Should the players have come back onto the pitch? Should they have let FIFA decide this, to go through the due process that is actually required, the protocols that are in place to deal with this? Or should the players now be a law unto themselves and they get to decide if they don't like something? And I'm not saying nothing was said, but I'm saying if they don't like it, and therefore then they can take their own action, which means that they can call a game off. Because that to me is a slippery slope. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a fascinating one, this football. I wonder whether it is just a little bit of sort of over-the-top virtue signalling from New Zealand in an environment where they will get a lot of kudos for taking a stance. But I think they have a responsibility to the game. There are a lot of things said in the game of football, not particularly nice. I mean, you've only got to have a look at the sledging that's gone on in this wonderful Ashes test at the moment. I do wonder, though, whether anything would be done. Call me a cynic here, Martin, but we are talking Qatar.
Yeah.
And you'd imagine that they've probably got FIFA in their pocket.
They have.
FIFA would
they have.
be.
We know
FIFA
that they
would,
have.
FIFA would be hesitant to do anything against Qatar. After all, I mean, they bought a World Cup, didn't
That's right.
they?
Yep. And I think that's a fear. I don't know whether that came into the actual decision-making process, because I don't believe it probably did. I just believe the emotion of the occasion has said the players are so offended by what went on that they go, no, bugger this, the ref's not doing anything about it. No, and when you get a chance to sit back, breathe a little bit about it and reconsider, I do wonder whether a more powerful statement would have been going on out there and making a deal about this player. Every time there's a free kick, going out there 5 years standing next to her and pointing fingers. I don't know. In hindsight, it's a lot easier to actually think about this. Yeah. I don't think FIFA would have done anything with Qatar as well. I think that they would write it off as a he said, she said, the referee didn't hear it, and so therefore nothing happened. So maybe our guys are making a statement, but at the same time, we live in a world where this shite continues to go on, and somebody somewhere has to be brave enough to stand up to it, don't they? And so I applaud our guys for doing something.
Yeah, look, and you're right on it. And maybe we need to sit back. It's sort of not something that happens every day. It's not something that happens a lot with our New Zealand football team, mind you. We don't play a lot, do we? I mean, look, also too, you look at this and go, what message does this send? Or New Zealand, they're not particularly mentally strong, are they? It doesn't take much to get underneath their skin. Boy, we've only got to say a few things and maybe re-change the wording a little bit, and we'll start living rent-free inside their head, and they'll capitulate. Look, I mean, a lot of things are said. It was interesting just having a look at that Qatari team. You know, they seem to have colours of all. They seem to have players in there of all different coloured skin. If I can use that.
They basically they do. They buy their players from all around the world. We know that, and then all of a sudden they get citizenship and they're born there with a new passport. I mean, we know that. That's how corrupt it is, right?
Yeah, but look, I mean, you've got to get rid of racism, isn't it? I mean, you're not born a racist, are you? And there are some terrible things said, and they've got to come down on it. But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, a referee needs to be held more accountable for maybe not sorting this issue out when it was clearly addressed and clearly had a big influence on this New Zealand team. But yeah, look, I don't think it was the best thing the All Whites could have done. I think they should have played the game. They're up by 1-0. I think the best thing you could do is win the game 2-0, 3-0, turned around and said, hey, look at the scoreboard, boys, look at the scoreboard, and, and actually sledge back or actually delivered the message in a more intelligent way and saying, and then, in addition to that, then addressing the issue in the press conference afterwards and forcing FIFA to sort of actually do something about it. But hey, in the spur of the moment, we all do things that maybe we look back and go, oh yeah, it could have probably been a better way of handling this, a better way of dealing with it. Yeah, disappointing. I mean, All Whites don't get to play a lot of games. The other thing, though, is why weren't the media in this country jumping up and down about the fact we were playing Qatar, like they did with the America's Cup winning to race in Saudi Arabia, and like they did, that's right, they didn't when Lydia won in Saudi Arabia.
Another issue, mate, and let's park it and let's leave that. Move on.
Apologise to me!
To your Blues, who have to be, I think, next to the Football Ferns, the most disappointing, overhyped, rubbish team to take a sports field in New Zealand in a very long time. I'm even got a little bit of empathy for the Football Ferns because they're just not that good. The Blues don't have that excuse. The Blues had 9 All Blacks out there against the Crusaders. Oh, but you made the semi-final, Watto. You made the semi-final. You should be celebrating. Get yourself a victory tattoo.
Yeah, five good teams, and we're celebrating the fact that we finished 4th in a 5-team competition. Oh, look, just disappointing, just so typical of Auckland, just so typical of the Blues. Look, I've probably got a few more concerns now around Leon McDonald, his coaching ability as well, and the fact that he's got such a big role in the All Blacks going forward. But yeah, Finlay Christie had his worst game. Mark Talia was found out on defence. Rieko Awani's not a centre. And I want to say this, and I know that you've had these conversations and we've disagreed on this, but what is the fascination seriously with Beauden Barrett? In all honesty, what is the fascination with this guy? Why are we so obsessed even off this next stint that he's going to have in Japan that we should somehow have New Zealand Rugby and the Blues renegotiate to try and get him back? It is time to move on. He's never been able to read a game. He's well past his best. And we saw the clear difference in class between himself and Richie Mo'unga. Yeah, look, you go down to it, don't you? Offer to Angavasi, Nepo Laulala, good scrummages, but that's about it. And that's been part of New Zealand Rugby. We've placed so much emphasis just on scrummaging that players no longer have that ability of a Steve McDowell to carry the ball, to run, to get to breakdowns, in a game which now requires really good ruck speed, that ability to turn over ball very, very quickly, staying on your feet, forcing the turnovers. Some players have stood up this year. I've been reasonably impressed with Adrian Choate. I think Ricky Riccatelli brings something, but also just dealing with the Blues organisation. I'm not sure how you guys go.
Oh, it's impossible, mate. Absolutely impossible, mate.
I know from an SENZ point of view, and we're trying to get Auckland, their media guys are just appalling, just atrocious to deal with. Never put anybody up. Oh, it's a Wednesday. Our guys don't do anything on a Wednesday. It's their one day off. But you wonder why these players can't go out there, can't change a game plan. You look at it. We've got a line-out coach. We've got a scrum coach. We've got a forwards coach. We've got a coach. We've got a backline coach. We've got a kicking coach. We've got a defence coach. We've got an attacking coach. We've got nutritionists. We've got exercise physiologists telling them how to do stuff in the gym. We've got somebody paid in the damn background telling them they need to get a degree in case their rugby career falls over. I mean, none of these guys have to think for themselves anymore. It's all about me. Pay me a lot of money or I'm going to disappear overseas.
We'll go then. Because I tell you what, I'm going to send that club a video and say, this is actually what you play like under pressure, under stress in an important match. You've just basically just ripped your own CVs in half, most of you players. I mean, you don't think that the world doesn't know that under pressure you crack like an egg? And you've done it for the All Blacks, most of these guys, and now you're doing it for the Blues. How could they be so absolutely unprepared for that game? It was a mirror image of the final last year. They got smacked in the face, and then they just folded and melted, mate. And as you say, Leon McDonald, I mean, tell us what you've won, mate. Tell us what you've actually won. If your name was Ian Foster, the whole country would be calling you for to be sacked, mate.
But this is the problem too. We talk about this, but look at the way coaches are appointed now in this country. Who cares if you've coached at first 15, senior club rugby level, maybe done some under 20s, and you've never been on the cover, you've never been an All Black? There's no pathway for you. Every coaching job has basically been taken by some former rugby player, some former All Black coming in now, because apparently if you're a great rugby player, you're a great rugby coach. So, we've shut those pathways down. Then you take the Blues. You mentioned 9 All Blacks. I mean, look at the team Ian Foster's pick, just rewarding the same guys, still telling us somehow they're going to turn donkeys into thoroughbreds and we're going to win this Rugby World Cup. The Highlanders are crap. So basically there's no one to select from the Highlanders. Then you look at the Blues performance and say you've reduced rugby down to about 3 teams in which we select from now. And somehow we expect it to be healthy. Somehow we expect to win a Rugby World Cup that beyond next year, once a whole lot of players up and leave, these veteran players, that we've just got all this depth coming through. The game is just an absolute shambles. It's an absolute mess. We said this 6 or 7 weeks ago, Martin.
No.
That when it's all said and done, it'll be a Crusaders-Chiefs final. And what's happened? It's a Crusaders-Chiefs final. And the fact that the Crusaders can win every year even though they are just decimated with injury, does not say a lot about the state of the game in this country, does it? And it just reinforces what we've said every week. I've just had an absolute and utter gutsful with it. And then I have to sit there and listen to Ian Foster tell me why Sean Stevenson is not good enough. Oh, he's got some defensive deficiencies, yet at the same time goes and picks Caleb Clark. No wonder some of these players end up going overseas, because there's no pathway. Stay here, be patient, don't take the money. We will reward you. No, you don't. No, you won't reward for quality. He's been the best player all year and still only makes this All Black squad based on the fact that he is there for injury cover. How does Jack Goodhue not end up making this midfield? We need experience. We need some class. You think we're going to win a Rugby World Cup with Geordie Barrett and Rieko Awani as our midfield?
Okay, well, I'll ask you this then: Are we going to win it? Are we going to win it with Anton Leonard-Brown in there? Because Anton Leonard-Brown was there in 2019. He didn't do it then. He's never done it against any international opponent except Australia. And yet they still back this wounded horse. Mate, I looked at that All Black squad yesterday, a lone voice in the wilderness, a man howling at the moon again. I'm sitting there saying, listen, I'm looking at the same players that have lost 9 test matches in the last 3 years and drawn 2. And yes, we had a good run at the end of last year. But we'd already suffered more losses in an All Black year than we do most, and we'd also rewritten the wrong kind of history. These same players are now going to be so much better come September, October than they've ever been. Better than the playing Super Rugby, because most of them haven't had great Super Rugby seasons. And you've mentioned Caleb, you've mentioned Rieko in there. When's the last time either of those guys you could actually genuinely say, wow, what a great game? So what we're expecting these same names to suddenly become better than their counterparts in Ireland, France, South Africa, Argentina, Australia, and England, teams that they have lost to over the last few years. Let me say this. Stop blaming Ian Foster, mate. This is all he's got to choose. This is the cattle that he's got. It's not his fault. It is the players now. Are you good enough? You know how to play a game of rugby. You know what it takes to win in an All Blacks jersey. Are you good enough? It doesn't matter who's coaching them, mate. Doesn't matter.
No. I disagree with that to a degree. I mean, the players that he's picking, are they the only players available? The fact that he can leave a Sean Stevenson out, I'm sorry.
Well, that's one player. Sean Stevenson's not winning a World Cup for us.
Sean Stevenson deserves to be in that team.
He may do. But an outside back's not winning a World Cup, mate. Look at our forward pack. Our forward pack doesn't dominate. That's the truth, Mark. Every other country in the world looks at our forward pack and thinks, we're coming through you. And that's what they've done in the last 4 years since we lost to England in the semi-final. That's reality.
Oh, look, I still think Scott Robertson in charge of this All Black team would still get more out of them, and I think he would still make
he'd get better press. He'd get better press from sycophants like yourself, mate.
No. But look, Martin, I mean, it's terribly sad, isn't it, that, as we've said, it's been okay to lose those 9 tests because it's all about winning the Rugby World Cup. I mean, seriously, what does Ofa Tuangavasi really provide this All Black team? You just go through it. I just look at, Nepal Laulala, well past his use-by date as well. We've still got Dane Cole somewhere in the mix here. And when it's all said and done, they're going to start bloody Beauden Barrett at fullback, mate, and they're going to start Richie Mwanga because we just want to try and get the best players on the field. When are people actually going to realise? When are people going to actually realise Beauden Barrett is not that guy? And this mentality of when he has another stint in Japan, they'll come back and we'll renegotiate because we want Beauden back in the system. Forget it, mate. Forget it. Let's just have Stephen Perifetta with the Blues. Let's stick with Plummer. Whatever happened to O'Terry Black? He disappeared because the Blues suddenly had 4 first 5/8s while the Highlanders have got none. And we wonder why the game is in such an appalling state. And it is just so damn frustrating because, people go, oh, you're just a rugby hater. No, I'm not. I'm just a damn fan that cares, mate. And I've just had an absolute and utter bloody gutsful of it. And no one seems to want to acknowledge it. No one seems to care anymore. And we, the fan, are just still sitting there, hoping on the edge of our seat that this next game might be the one that turns it all around. We might go back to the good old days. It ain't happening, Mark.
Apologise to me!
Final topic then, and every time that this team gets announced, it just boils my blood. They are not an All Blacks 15. An All Blacks 15 is called the All Blacks. They are the All Blacks. Whatever this team is, whatever this squad is, it can be a development squad, a New Zealand 15, or whatever it is. Call it that. And I've had Twitter wars with people, it doesn't dilute the brand. Hell, it dilutes the brand. Last year we had these two teams playing at the same time. The headlines in Europe were All Blacks lose to Barbarians. No, we didn't. These guys aren't All Blacks. You don't call them All Blacks. All Blacks play for our national team. You have to earn that jersey by right. An All Blacks 15 is not an All Blacks. Now, I mean, this kind of stuff, it absolutely just rips me. It really does. And people will probably go, hey, you should be more concerned about something else. No. Because in another 15 years, Mark, what we're going to do is we're going to have an All Blacks red side that plays out of LA, and we're going to have one that plays out of Hong Kong, and we're going to have 4 that play under the Ultrad banner somewhere else. This is what's happening, people. They have sold their soul, New Zealand rugby. And now you've got 5 different sides trotting around the world calling themselves the All Blacks. How is that good for an aura, for keeping a brand alive, for keeping a mystique alive?
It's not, Martin. You know, it's become the Harlem Globetrotters, isn't it? Send the Harlem Globetrotters team to Europe, send one down here, and let's put some exhibition football on. No, you're right. And I've said this for a long time. You've got to protect your brand. The All Black brand is about precision, performance, and no compromise. It's 130 years or whatever of winning 85% of your games. Now, I'll give you an example. I was studying up in Canada in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and I went and studied in Toronto. Now I was aware of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'd heard of it. I was aware of the Stanley Cup. But while I was over there, you know, I got to know some very, very cool people, and we became close friends. And they were passionate about the sport, and they upskilled me a bit on the Stanley Cup and the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I spent a lot of time telling them about the All Blacks. And they had heard of the All Blacks, and they knew that they were this sort of mystical team and the best rugby side in the world. And then about 10 years after that, I was corresponding with a very close friend. He said, "Oh, I see the All Blacks got beaten by the United States and we beat them." I said, "No, that's not right." He said, no. And he sent me the link, and it was the Sevens team. It was the All Black Sevens, but it had just been reported. It had just been reported as, United States beat the Sevens. And I think it was in Las Vegas. And a week later, Canada beat us at the Vancouver Sevens. And you go, see, this is where they don't get it. So suddenly these people who don't understand rugby just look at it and go, oh, the All Blacks were beaten by Canada. They were beaten by the United States. So suddenly in their mind, this aura has been diminished. And therefore that All Black brand is just slowly being chipped away. And this is the danger with it. If you are going to attach the word All Blacks to it, you need to make sure you have the same resource, and you need to make sure this team just doesn't lose. But they do lose. And you're 100% correct. There is only one All Black team. And ironically, it is that brand that is part of the reason why money comes into New Zealand rugby. It is the aura of the All Blacks. So the very thing that's providing them the financial stability is they're actually, through that financial stability, actually undermining the hand that feeds. And it just makes no sense. And you go again through the people that sit on the board, these highfalutin people that are part of the executive at New Zealand Rugby, and you think, what part of this don't
It's the most basic marketing, isn't it? It's
I
get.
worked for Nike, Martin, for 3 years, and that's $1 billion brand. You should have seen the things we couldn't do in and around the Nike swoosh. You weren't, if you sponsored an athlete, they weren't allowed to put any other sponsorship on a singlet because it wasn't a billboard. It was considered to be functional. It was almost considered to be equipment. That's why when you see the Nike players, there is nothing else on their shirts, those high-paid players. The quality of product, they knew where they wanted to be. They'd made mistakes. You don't find their product in the warehouse. You don't find them heavily discounting. You don't just find cheap crap with a Nike swoosh these days on just out there in the public. They understand about protecting their brand. They know what they stand for. And this is what New Zealand rugby just don't get. And it's just one more thing that is just slowly diluting, slowly eroding rugby. And we haven't even talked about the rules, have we, Martin?
No.
And how that's also holding the game back. And you just sit there, you scratch your head, and hey, Martin, but apparently we're just rugby haters.
No, we're rugby haters,
mate.
No, that's right. No, we don't get it. One final question before we go, because I do believe that this is going to be a cracking Super Rugby final this weekend. You got two teams that have...
Crusaders will win it, Martin.
Is that easy?
That easy. Crusaders will win it, and they'll win it comfortably, mate.
Devlin.
You gotta love sport.
The platform.